You're listening to Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. In this episode, we're talking about, and I want to go in depth on a concept that I call taking ownership of your life. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. Ownership of your life. Now, let me ask you, as I say ownership of your life, what does that mean to you? Before I decided to do this episode, I went and I looked up the definition of ownership, and the definition of ownership is the act, state, or right of possessing something. Now, when it comes to you in your life, what is the act? What is the state? And what rights do you have, and what do you possess with your life? I want to share a perspective with you. I here, let me just share the perspective. It's this, is that you own your life. That bag of skin that you're walking around in, and different people call it different things, and most of us don't even look at life that in depth, or to the degree that, that I'm talking about here. But that bag of skin, whatever the name is, Bob or Sue or Mary or Jane or Mike or Susan or whatever, is you own. You own you. Now, of course, we're all multidimensional beings, and there's a duality to us. And when I say multidimensional, I'm not going to go too far here. Yet physicists have demonstrated that there are at least 9 dimensions, and you actually function in those 9 dimensions. But when I say, when I say duality, I mean there's a higher you, there's a lower you, there's your consciousness, which you cannot physically see, there is your soul, obviously, and then there's a bag of skin that you call you. But you know what? That bag of skin that you call you, whatever it is, for example, mine is Jim, I own. I own this bag of skin. And the same thing with, whatever bag of skin you walk around in, and whatever it looks like, and whatever color it is, and however tall it is, or whatever weight that it is, you own that bag of skin. So the definition is the act, state, or right of possessing something. So a question for you, what do you possess? Now, what you possess is the power to heal, the power to create, the power to manifest, the power to attract, the power to reflectively think, and the power to create anything that you want. And here's the thing, is you possess all of this. And I know you've seen it in many places. I know somebody recently sent me a message on Instagram talking about the movie Aladdin. And I was flying last week, and I actually almost watched the movie because it just dawned on me to watch the movie Aladdin. I didn't. I watched something else instead on my flight to California. But think about what I'm saying here. And the classic movie, The Wizard of Oz. The wizard tells Dorothy at the end of the movie, when she's on the air balloon going back to Kansas, is that it was within her all the time. Now, I actually haven't watched that in many years. Maybe it wasn't the wizard, maybe it was the witch, I don't know. But anyway, she was told that it was in her, the power was in her all the time. So I'm going to go back here again, is you own your life. And then obviously, part of that definition is possessing something. And then I talk about what you possess is you own and you possess the power to heal, the power to create, the power to manifest, the power to attract, and the power to think reflectively about anything that you want. And here's the kicker, is that even though we possess these powers, I don't care what nationality you are, I don't care where you are on the planet, you own these things. And most of us never, it's kind of like we have a gift and we never unwrap it. I don't know. I don't know why Aladdin keeps coming back into my mind again. Maybe I'm thinking about rubbing the lamp or something. But really consider that. So somewhere else I want to go, based upon what I just said, is the power to heal, power to create, power to manifest, power to attract, and to think reflectively, amongst other things. You, you're the creator of your life. And of course, I mean, you're sitting there maybe listening or whatever you're doing at the gym, or I don't know. I mean, I read comments, people post here and there about what they're doing when they're listening to the podcast. And by the way, I do want to say is that we will hit 1 million downloads in our very first year with this podcast. And a heartfelt thank you. I'm so grateful and so honored to be able to serve. Do I please everyone? No, probably not. And it doesn't, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. I do what I do. But for those of you that listen and you share, and I'm very grateful for that, thank you so much for that. Now, to what I was saying is, we've all heard this before, is, the thing is we hear it and we understand it, but we don't come to know it. So what I want you to come to know, and there's a difference between understanding something, as I've said many times, and maybe even in this podcast, I'm sure, there's a difference between understanding something and knowing something. We can definitely understand what it's like, what it is to have a broken arm, not what it's like, but what it is to have a broken arm. But it's a whole different ball of wax to actually have a broken arm or a broken bone. For example, I've never had a broken bone, so I can't say I know what it's like to have a broken bone. Yet, if I ask someone who's had a broken bone, trust me when I tell you, they know what it's like to have a broken bone. And the same thing with this content. You can understand it all day long. You can understand that you're the creator of your life. You can understand that, you have ownership of your life. But the power comes when you come to know that. So, you have ownership of your life and you are responsible for what you do with that ownership. You may squander it. You may actually, I don't know what you're going to do with it. It's entirely up to you, but I want you to know is that you do have it. When I talk about ownership and responsibility, some people think they're the same thing. And the definition of responsibility is causing something to happen. And most of us, I think I've created an episode here, most of us are actually irresponsible with our lives because we do not cause things to happen. And then what a lot of us do is we blame external circumstances. This didn't happen. This person didn't do this. The economy did this. Donald Trump did this. Putin did this, or that person did this, or this prime minister, or whatever. Yet the definition of responsibility is, again, causing something to happen. And what I want to share with you is having ownership of your life doesn't mean that you possess responsibility. I also want to share with you, because we'll intermix here and talk about this, is the amount of however you define it, but the word success. The amount of success that you have in life will be the amount of success that you are responsible for. Now, also is you own your life, and I think I've alluded to this, I'm just hopping around here a bit, is that you own your life no matter how responsible you are for your life. So let's say, for example, that, and by the way, I don't take notes, so I just talk as what comes to me. But this is what comes to me right now is that you own your life, but then you have to look at how responsible you are with that ownership in terms of your wealth, your relationships, and your health. So you can own your life, but guess what? What if you're putting drugs into your body every single day? Well, then how responsible are you with the life that you own? I guess the metaphor would be, for example, you can own a home, and then the question is how responsible are you with the home that you own? Do you keep it well manicured? Do you keep it up? Do you change your air conditioning filters? Do you do all the things that you need to do to maintain your home? Or are you irresponsible with your home? And if you're irresponsible, then your home becomes dilapidated. And the same thing with your life. So a question is this: have you ever sat down and fully considered that you own you. You own you and you own your life. And you are the only planet. I mean, geez, I'm tired. It's late at night. You're the only, what I was going to say is you're the only person on this planet who owns you. No one else on this planet. And you know what? We can go a lot of different directions here. I'm not going to get into it here. There are human beings who think they own other human beings in terms of slavery and sex trade and all this kind of stuff. But in truth, no one owns you. You own you. So, a huge thought for you. What if? What if you 100% fully accepted that everything that you have in your life is a reflection of your ownership, responsibility, and co-creation? And this scares a lot of people because, see, a lot of people run around in what I call victim mentality. And victim mentality partly is, you know what, I'm powerless to change no matter what. I can't change. No matter what I do, I can't change, which is also very damaging contextual thinking. But many people run around in life and the mindset that they have is that things happen to me and I have to deal. That's also victim mentality, and it's assuming no ownership and no 100% responsibility for your life. Now, do things, air quote, happen in life? Yes. Do things happen to you? Well, to me, that's not the way that I look at it. The way that I look at it is that I co-create every single thing in my life, no matter what it is. It doesn't matter. And I mean, when I say it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. I am a creator. I am a manifester, as we all are. And whatever I have in my life, I have co-created. What I do not have in my life, I have also co-created. But then what a lot of us do is we assume victim mentality. Oh, and then we get a lot of people get into self-pity. Oh, you know what? Boo-hoo. I don't have this. I don't have that. It's not my fault. I was born on the wrong side of the tracks, which are stories that we tell ourselves. And in reality, many of us don't, and by the way, I've been there many years ago, is we do not accept full ownership and full responsibility for every single thing in our life. So I want to share this thought with you is that you are responsible for your life and you are responsible for what is in your life. So let that sink in a bit. You're responsible for your life and you're responsible for what's in your life. Why? Because you own it. I'm surprised they haven't barked when I'm in the middle of a podcast episode, but I have dogs. And I don't take my dogs to the dog park anymore because there's so many people that don't pay attention to their dogs and this and that. And one of my dogs is really big. He's got really sweet energy, and other dogs gang up on him. I'm not quite sure why. It's the vibe that he puts off, but other dogs try to dominate him. But you know what? When I take my dog to the dog park, I am 100% responsible for watching after my dog, making sure that, he's not attacked or whatever, but I'm responsible for him. And when I look at me, the same thing. I'm responsible for me. Why? Because I own me. This is mine. This body that I'm in, this life that I'm currently living. So what I want you to look at is if you have no money in your life, you created it. Consider that. You created it. It wasn't the external world. It's you. Why? Because it's your life that you own. If you have tons of money in your life, guess what? You created it. Now, and it gets a little taxing to do this every single episode to be, politically correct, but I do want to be respectful. When I say you created it, there are some things. For example, I could say if you're homeless, you created it. Well, there are also people that have mental health issues, and I understand that. But let's say, for example, that you are of sound mind. Well, then everything you have in life you created. And I don't know the guy's name. We have mutual friends. One of my friends posted because they were friends of this guy that's a quadriplegic. Yeah, quadriplegic. And he's a multimillionaire. And then you look at Stephen Hawking when he's on the planet. I mean, the guy literally had, I don't know, like at the end of his life, I don't think he really had use of anything physically. But then, I mean, he's one of the greatest minds of our time. So anyway, when I say political correctness, I had to go in that little caveat about maybe mentally ill or something like that. But generally speaking, when you're of sound mind, if you have no money, you created it. You have money. You created and co-created it. If you got a crappy relationship or a great relationship, guess what? Whether it be friends or family or your significant other, you've co-created it. Now, here's something that some people are going to push back on is, but even health, you are the co-creator of your health. And we live in a world, I'm not going to go too much, this episode's not about that, but we live in a world, and especially in the United States, that being ill is air quote normal. I mean, in the United States, and by the way, I want to give myself I want to give myself an out here. It's been many years, but I did research many years ago on the amount of money that pharmaceutical companies invested in advertising versus research and development. Now, I do concede that I could be wrong at this point today. It's been many years. But many years ago, I found some credible research. This was back before the air quote again fake news. I found that pharmaceutical companies at that time spent 4 times as much money on marketing and advertising as they did R&D. So anyway, I don't want to go too far off topic here, but we live in a world where in the United States where I think 50% of the population is on pharmaceuticals. And what people don't recognize is they're on pharmaceuticals to a large degree, and I might get some pushback, and that's fine. I'll talk about this all day long, is that you co-created it. There's an old phrase, and it's an ancient phrase, and it's healthy mind, or it's healthy in the mind, healthy in the body. And what a lot of people don't recognize is that even their health, they are the ones that are co-creating it because they're not being 100% responsible with their thinking and their emotions, and they're not owning it. Then what a lot of people do is they get ill, and the first place they do is, or the first thing they do is they run to the pharmaceutical companies and their doctors. Their doctors poke pills in them. And then, unfortunately, many people will have some adverse side effects from the medications that they are taking. So let me get back here, and then I'll talk a little more about health and wellness, is what most people do also, and I say most, and I'm just exhaling here because I do see it a lot. I don't know the exact percentage, whether it's 61.4 or 72.3 or whatever, but let me put it this way. A large percentage of the population defers responsibility in their life to something external, which I alluded to earlier. No, it's not me. Well, it's because of my ex-husband, or my ex-wife did this, or my employee did this, or the economy did this, or the American president did this, or that market did this. And most of us never step up and say, you know what? Again, I own my life and I'm 100% responsible for the things. Let me put it this way. I'm 100% responsible for co-creating what is in my life. Something else I share with people a lot of times is people think that things just happen to them, arbitrarily. And again, air quote, happen to them. And this is what I tell people. And people will say, life is testing me. And I'll say, you know what? The universe doesn't test you. It reflects you. And if you want to look at your level of responsibility and ownership in your life, then look at your life. And if your life is going really well, and you have things that you want, and you're attracting, and you have well-being, and you're expanding and growing, well, guess what? You're accepting ownership of your life, and you're being responsible with your decisions. And if you do not have that, it's like being a factory manager. If the factories run well, that's a reflection of the management. If the factory is being run poorly, well, that's also a reflection of the management. Now, you look at a factory that's run really well and look at production. Look at a factory that's not run well and look at the lack of production. You can take that same metaphor and apply it to your life. Now, as I said, I know that this is a stretch for a lot of people to get their mind around. Yet, we live in a culture. I told some people many years ago that we learn to be overweight. And I remember a client that I had, and she was overweight, and I said, "How long have you been overweight?" And she goes, "Oh, all my life." And I said to her also, I said, "Is everyone in your family overweight?" And she's like, "Yep, we're Italian. That's what we do. That's what we eat." Well, that's her that's her story about being Italian. And what I recognized back then is that we learn to be overweight. Now, we might have some genetics that predispose us, and what people have said before I've read is that, for example, genetics load the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger. And so I'm going to go here for a second about wellness, health and wellness. When I say, for example, and what I'm going to say here again may have some people yelling at me and throwing tomatoes at me or whatever, but here's the thing. I tell people, with the exception of small children, because there's some karma playing out there, but for the most part, with adults, illness is a choice. Now, again, I know some people might be going, Jim, what are you possibly thinking? I didn't want this. I didn't want that. And I'm going to do a whole episode on this, not too far down the road. I've got to finish up a series that I'm doing through the end of the year. But early next year, I really want to start talking about health and wellness a great deal because here in the U.S., we have a significant part of the population that is not well. But what I want to leave here and now is this, is that remember we're talking about ownership. And because you own your life, you can command. You can command your body. Now, where I learned that was, I don't know how long you've been listening, but I've mentioned on every episode or every other that my brother-in-law is a shaman. Shamans are healers or seers. Uh, Shaman translates into one that can see in the dark. My brother-in-law is very inexpensive, and people from all over the world call him for healing when they can't find healing at doctors or they're not getting what they need or whatever. His waiting list is literally over a year long. And I remember him telling me, it was last year, we were sitting down talking, and he was talking to me about owning your life. What I'm sharing with you right here, even though I didn't say it, is things that I've come to know by working with him. And he said to me one time, he said, you own your life. And because you own your life, you can command your life. You can command your body. So when it comes to health and wellness, start commanding your body to be well. Which you may want to listen to also. I've listened to off and on over the years. They're not somebody that I listen to on a regular basis, but what I've listened to over the years or watched videos has been very sound is Dr. Bruce Lipton, Lipton on YouTube, and Greg Braden. Both of them have what I consider to be excellent content when it comes to health and wellness and how our body communicates it with itself. I mean, for example, every thought that you have, whatever the thought is, that I'm sick or let me give you an example here. Let me back up. Have you ever seen somebody before, maybe even you, let's say that you, maybe it's actually the cold and flu season, which also is a cultural, how do I say this? I have not thought about this in a lot of years. Oh my gosh, let me go here for a second. Tylenol. Around November, their commercials will come on and they've done it for many years in many forms. But I remember one commercial. The commercial was moms. Cold and flu season is here, and when your little one gets sick, you can depend on children's Tylenol. Now, teaching persuasion and influence for a lot of years, what I recognized is none of us have marked on our calendar. I mean, if you look at your calendar right now and you look at the third Thursday, well, that's Thanksgiving. But I want you to look on your calendar and I want you to tell me the date that cold and flu season starts. So then what happens, and by the way, I've not thought of this story in 10 years and I used to share it in seminars. So then what happens is moms see the commercial on TV, and there's a little boy sniffling on the bed and music, in the background and rain pattering down on the window. Moms calling to the target market. Cold and flu season is here. When your little one gets sick, meaning that's emotional also, your little one, you can depend on children's Tylenol. Now, moms see that, and no one ever says, well, is cold and flu season here or is it not here? People just they accept. It's a suggestion, actually. They just accept it. Then what mothers do is they start talking to their kids. Bundle up, stay warm, wash your hands. You're going to get sick. You're going to get sick. You're going to get sick. They tell their kids this, and then what do kids do? They get sick, and then who can you depend on? Children's Tylenol. Now, let me come back to, I've got like 4 stories deep here. Let me come back. Speaking of that, and the power of commanding your body, and you can command anything. You can command health, you can command wealth because you own your life. But how about this? You start feeling sick one afternoon at work. And what a lot of people do is they say, you know what? I hope I don't get sick. I hope I don't get sick. And then guess what? They're sick. That night, they're running a fever and they're sick and they're in bed with the flu. Let's contrast that. Have you ever actually had so much to do, you feel like a fever coming on, and you're like, no way. I have no time, none, no time for this. This is not going to happen. I need to stay well, and you stay well. Well, the whole thing is this: whatever you say to yourself, literally, in terms of your thinking and your feeling, that's literally communication, and thought communication communicates with all the cells in your body. So you communicate health and you command it, that's what happens. You communicate like illness and you don't, it's just what you communicate, and that's what happens in the body. So what I'm sharing with you, try it on for size and just play with it for a bit. But I want to give you a couple of stories here about ownership. So I don't know what episode it was. It was probably 2 months ago when I interviewed Katie. And Katie was on a couple of medications. And actually, the idea for this episode came from Katie because I was talking to her about her healing. And in that episode, Katie talks about how she was on a couple of medications. She was on thyroid medications. The doctors told her that she was going to be sick for the rest of her life. She was never going to have normal hormone levels, all these kind of things. Today, Katie's on none of those medications as a result of learning how to actually communicate with her body, which I taught her, and how to actually reprogram her subconscious mind, which I taught her. And today she's well, and she's very well. And Katie one time said, I said, Katie, tell me tell me the process, everything I taught you. Tell me the process. And this is what she said. She said, I decided to take ownership of my life and to be well. So I want to contrast that for a second. I remember in my first group TCP, Transformational Coaching Program, there was a woman in the program, and she was diagnosed many years ago with a very severe illness. Today, she's extremely well, and she's very healthy. And I said, tell me your story. And she says, you know what? As a result of my illness, I was given, like, what's it called? The handicap thing that you put on your mirror and all that. She goes, I never used any of the handicap stuff because I never wanted to have the identity as a person who was sick. And she said to me inadvertently, which also comes into this episode, she goes, I was taking ownership of my life. Now, let me give you a money story. Very good friend of mine. Guys, I don't have any sponsors here at this podcast. You probably recognize a lot of podcasts have sponsors. I do not. That is by choice, and I've had people approach me about being sponsors. At this point, maybe we'll do it in the future, but right now, I have no desire to have a sponsor. One of my very good friends, and I mentioned that because I've mentored him, I've coached him personally. He's one of my very good friends. His name is Drew Canole, Canole, and he owns a brand called Organifi. You may want to look it up. It's entirely on your own. And he was actually one of the first people that approached me and said, hey, Jim, I want to be a podcast sponsor. Anyway, I tell you this because many years ago I was talking to him. Today his company does something like $100 million a year. I don't know. They do really, really well. Very, very well. They have a phenomenal product. Anyway, enough of that. But I remember talking to him, and we talked for a couple of years. We talked intermittently. And I talked to him at the end of, and he wouldn't mind me telling you the story because he's got a huge heart and he's all about helping people. I talked to him at the end of one year, and he was not really that well off financially. And the very next year, he had made his first $1 million in the matter of 12 months. And I remember talking to him, and I said, Drew, what did you do differently? And what he said is I decided that I was going to be wealthy, which is responsibility and it's ownership. So I share Katie's story and I share Drew's story with you. So think about that. I'm going to wrap this up here in a second, but consider that for a second. Is what does it mean for you to be 100% responsible? And again, remember, it doesn't mean ownership because you can own and not be responsible. But what would it mean for you, and what would your life look like a year from now if you were 100% responsible for every outcome in your life and you took ownership of your life? So the transformational takeaway is this. And hopefully, guys, some episodes flow easier than others. I do not script these out. Sometimes I will jot down, hey, Jim, remember to say this, remember to say that. But for the most part, I just put a microphone on and I go. So hopefully you found value, and I did get the ball across the plate and what I wanted to share with you in this episode. So I'm going to slow down here, and I want to say this, is that you You own your life and everything in it. It's like a woman carrying a purse. It's her purse and everything in it's hers. Just metaphorically speaking. You own your life and everything that's in it is yours. So that's your transformational takeaway this week, is that everything in your life is yours because you own your life. And then a secondary takeaway, I know you've heard it before, but please, whatever you're doing, just sit with this for a bit and come to fully know this, is that you're the creator. You're the creator of your life. And I request that you own that thought. Okay, so that wraps up this episode, and the next episode is a Q&A on Monday, and that's Brooke. Brooke wrote in, and she had a really long question. I'm going to give you the essence of it, and then I'm going to break it down more on the podcast episode. But her question was actually related to children, but this can apply to anything in our lives. Her question is how not to let the behavior of others, meaning her kids, affect her thought processes and her internal state. And I'm really looking forward to that episode, because once we learn to manage our emotions and manage our emotional states and manage our thinking, life becomes so much easier. So on Monday's episode, I'm going to actually answer Brooke's question. Okay, as you've heard me say before, we do have an outro on all the episodes, and it's pre-recorded, but again, as I alluded to a little earlier in my time today, is we will hit 1 million downloads in my very first year. And I couldn't do that without you, and I couldn't do that without you sharing. And for me, it gives me an opportunity to serve, to bring my gifts, to help people heal, to help them bring abundance and prosperity in their life. And as I've said before, many people on Instagram and different places, and they'll write in to support and they'll say thank you. And it's quite the opposite. I want to heartfelt thank you for listening and letting me serve and for sharing this podcast. Okay, I'll catch you over on Monday's episode. So take care, stay well, and I'll catch you later. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. If you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one, by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.